Have you ever seen this movie? Of course you have. It's a classic. Well, maybe you haven't. Needless to say, it's a great movie in my opinion. It's actually based off of a true story. Yes, of Princess Anastasia Romanov. Before we get into this, feel free to fact check me, but just know that you won't have to because my facts are factual. What is Anastasia's true story? Is she alive? Is she dead? Did Disney tell the truth? Did she end up having a fairy tale ending? Well, keep on watching because in this video, we will find out what happened to Anastasia Romanov. Buckle up your seatbelts because we're taking a journey to the past. Anastasia, or should I say Anastasia Nikolaevna Romanov, was the daughter to the last Tsar of Russia, Nicholas II. Tsar Nicholas II was not a great Tsar. He was not recognized as a Tsar whose leadership capabilities would go down in history in a positive way. Matter of fact, he is the reason why we're here right now, because due to his ill capacity to lead Russia effectively, his family was executed. But that's another story, so let's move along. Tsar Nicholas II and his wife Alexandra gave birth to 5 children, 4 beautiful girls and a little boy. From oldest to youngest, we have Olga, Tatiana, Maria, and the girl of the hour, Anastasia, and the youngest was the heir, Alexei. Anastasia was born June 18th, 1901 in Petrovets near St. Petersburg. She's a Gemini. In her younger years, Anastasia, along with her siblings, were taught by their mother, Tsarina Alexandra. They were taught to spell and prayers. As she grew older, she was assigned to a Swiss tutor. Anastasia and Maria were looked after by a governess, while her older sisters were seen after by her mother's ladies-in-waiting. So let's get into the good stuff. In Anastasia, the Disney film, we are not introduced to the family. We aren't even given a real background story of Anastasia. The only thing we really know is that she's on a journey to find out who she was before she lost her memory, right? While this is true, we do see glimpses of Anastasia's family, aka Tsar Nicholas and even Alexei, in clips when they're swimming by the lake. Do you remember that? And while their story wasn't really told, we do see a portrait of the family. But in true Disney style, the story was glamorized to tell a horrific story. When the story opens up, we hear the voice of an older woman who we later find out is Anastasia's grandmother, Maria Fyodorovna Romanov. I'm sorry for butchering these names in advance. She reminisces on a powerful, growing, happy kingdom, which we know is not true. But if you didn't know, I'm telling you now that under his leadership, the country was in disarray, straight chaos, okay? So in the Disney tale, we are not being told what life really was under his leadership. And in the movie, we aren't told how they actually die. We're told that they were cursed by Rasputin, which we know from knowing the history that was not true. So in the movie, we have Rasputin, who is an evil monk who was kicked out of the royal house because the family found out that he was not who he proclaimed to be. And so because he was kicked out of the house, he now wants to come back and curse the family because he lost his life's work. So like I said, he promises to curse the family, and then he promises that you will pay, you will die because you just ruined my life. So what does Rasputin do? He sells his soul to the devil, and in return, he gets a curse. And what is this curse supposed to do? It's supposed to the family, in which he almost succeeds. So the grandmother gets away. I'm telling the story, by the way, for those who didn't see it. Go watch it. But I'm just going to keep going. So while Anastasia and her grandmother are running away, Rasputin tries to get Anastasia. But what happens is he doesn't succeed and he dies, or so we think. Grandma gets away. Anastasia tries to get away, but she doesn't. She hits her head while trying to get on the train and loses her memory, and then the scene closes. Years later, Anastasia is on a journey to find out who she is, because she just knows that she's more than what life is presenting her to be. Or at that point, she doesn't know that, but she just wants to know who her people are, okay? So while she's on this journey, Rasputin is brought back to life in order to successfully complete his mission to get rid of the Romanovs. She was the last one, and you know, he had to get rid of her. Long story short, she gets in contact with her grandmother. Rasputin dies. The end. Thank you. See you next week. I'm playing. To be real, that's not the way things went, okay? That's not the way things went. I'm going to give you a little truth to the tale. In 1917, the February Revolution forced Tsar Nicholas II to abdicate the throne. Nicholas, his wife, and their 5 children were shipped to Sorsky Selo. I'm just going to put the name right here for any of the words that I don't know how to pronounce. I'm sorry. They were transported to Tsarskoye Selo Palace, and that's where they were held. They were then later taken to Ekaterinburg. And this happens when the Bolsheviks seized power in the October Revolution. The Bolsheviks played a huge role in this whole situation, and actually they're known now as the Communist Party in the Soviet Union. Civil war was raging in 1918, and the anti-Bolsheviks were coming up with a plan to save the royal house. Fearing that Nicholas and his family would be rescued, the local authorities put out a death sentence on Nicholas and the rest of the Romanovs. Just after midnight on July 17th, 1918, the family was getting prepared to flee Russia. Along with them were 4 servants and their family doctor, Dr. Bakin. They were ordered to get dressed quickly and go down into the cellar where they were being held. There, the family were arranged in 2 rows for a photograph. This photograph was used to fuel the rumors that the family had actually escaped. And suddenly, over 12 men burst in the room and just hailed gunfire. And those who were alive after the gun smoke cleared were then stabbed to death. 14 miles away from Ekaterinburg, the bodies were taken by the executioners. They were burned in a bonfire and then sprinkled with sulfuric acid so that their bones were unrecognizable. Then they were thrown into a mine pit which was covered in dirt. The Bolshevik government said that only Nicholas was executed, and that the wife and the 5 children were taken to a safe location. Later reports then confirmed that everyone was executed. What did Disney get right? Well, they really ain't getting nothing right except for her name. I'm joking. What they did get right is that there were many that came across as being the real Anastasia Romanov, but then it was quickly proved that they were frauds. And this because there was a persistent rumor that was fueled throughout Europe saying that there was an existent child, and this existing child just so happened to be Princess Anastasia. Some of the most famous imposters were Anna Anderson and Eugenia Smith. Anna Anderson! Between 1918 and 1928, there were numerous amounts of people that came across as Anastasia. Anna Anderson was born December 16th, 1896 in Poland. On February 26, 1928, she came forward as Anastasia Shavatsky, and she claimed to be the lost daughter of Tsar Nicholas II. On this day, Anastasia gets to New York City for a press conference with the Berengaria. Why does she want to be in a press conference? Why is she holding a press conference? Why is she doing this? Well, she's doing this because her jaw isn't aligned. Well, what does that have to do with anything? right? It's important because she said that her jaw was put out of place by a Bolshevik soldier in her near-death experience with her family who were executed. Anastasia was welcomed to New York by Gleb Botkin, who was the physician of the family, but he got killed during the execution. Okay, so his son is now taking care of Anastasia and claims that this has to be the young girl that I used to play with when I was growing up. It has to be her. This is her. He was calling her Your Highness, Your Majesty, all of the above, because he honestly believed that this was the princess. Like I said before, over the span of 10 years, the world was misled by so many imposters. At this point, America is like, we don't know who you are, Anastasia. We don't know where you came from, but we're a little bit skeptical of you and we're giving you the side eye. Nevertheless, while we were skeptical, she was still given the royal treatment while she was in New York. She was invited to society parties. She stayed at the best hotels. I mean, she was getting the royal treatment. So while registering for a hotel, she used the name Anna Anderson, and that just became her permanent alias. I tell you, during this time, a lot of Romanovs were accepting Anna or Anastasia as the lost princess because she just seemed to know everything that only a royal would know. She even resembled the lost princess Anastasia just a little bit. There are others who are still skeptical because she didn't really know some key details of Anastasia's life, and these are just things that you do not forget according to them. Not only that, she forgot English, French, amongst other languages that Anastasia would have known. A lot of people were saying that the inconsistencies were probably due to all of the trauma she's been through, which is, I get it, I guess, but you know. So let me just give you a little sneak peek into Anna's life after the death of her family. So in 1920, she was recognized as a suicidal woman who was pulled from the Landwehr Canal in Berlin. She refused to tell any authorities who she really was, and she was committed to the Dordorf Asylum. She lived there as Jane Doe until 1922, until she revealed herself as the Princess Anastasia. During this time, Europe was filled due to the Russian exiles that tried to flee during the Bolshevik Revolution. Now, let me tell you, Anna had it. She had it going. Let me tell you why. Because not only was she beautiful, but she was also articulate enough to be Princess Anastasia. Not only that, her body was full of ugly scars that she said occurred during the night of her family's execution. So all of this stuff is just aligning. You see? It's aligning. So how did she survive this massacre? She claimed that one Bolshevik soldier pitied her and helped her flee to the west. While the Romanov descendants are playing a game of is she or is she not a Romanov, her followers and those who are supporting her are in legal battle to help her be recognized as Anastasia Romanov. So why is this important? This is important because if she obtains the legal right to be seen as Anastasia Romanov, she will have access to all of her riches. Not only will she get riches, but she will also be a prominent head figure in the USSR. And not only that, she would also be seen as a Tsarist, which would be somebody to overthrow that current dictatorship, leadership that Russia was under at the time. So, of course, this is just, it's just a lot going on right now, right? So the Grand Duke of Hesse, which is her mother, Alexandra's brother, and of course her uncle, he was like, all right, this is getting a little crazy. Let's do a real investigation to see if she's the real thing or if she's a fraud. The investigator announced that, drum roll, she was a fraud. She was in fact Franziska Szankowska. I butchered that. That was just bad. A Polish-German factory worker who disappeared in 1920. She had a long history of mental instability, and she was injured on the job in an explosion in the year of 1916. So that accounted for all the scars she had. These findings were published in German newspapers, but it wasn't proved definite. So she continued to try to attain her assets. As the decades went by, she continued to lose her cases, and she still tried to fight for recognition. Anna Anderson died on February 12, 1984 in Charlottesville, Virginia. But let me tell you, because it was confirmed that she wasn't, I'm going to give you the tea right now. In 1991, scientists found what would have been the remains of the Romanov family. When they found the remains, they found 3 girls, a mother, a father, and they also found who could have been the servants, right? To prove the identity of Alexandra and the kiddos, they took the DNA from Prince Philip, the consort of Queen Elizabeth II, who was the grandnephew of Alexandra. Yes, they're all connected. You see how the royals are just connected? Yes. Because they all had the same common maternal ancestor, right? So they took the DNA from the bodies and compared it to the DNA of Prince Philip. So the remains and Philip, let me put some respect on the prince name, and Prince Philip's DNA, they were positive. They were a positive match. So these bodies were the Romanovs. Also the remains of Grand Duke George, who is the brother of Nicholas II, his remains were exhumed, and guess what? That was also a positive match. So they found the Tsar, the Tsarina, and their 3 children. So where's Anastasia and where's Alexei? The tea is getting hot. It's getting hot. Could Anastasia have escaped? And could she have turned up as Anna Anderson? Well, in 1994, English scientists wanted to know the answers. An English team wanted to find out if Anna Anderson was a Romanov. So what did they do? They compared the mtDNA of the Romanovs to the DNA of Anna Anderson. And then American scientists did the same thing. They took a strand of her hair and compared it to the mtDNA of the Romanovs. And guess what? The results were conclusive. She was not the 1, the 2, or the 3. She was not related. Later on, the scientists compared Anna Anderson's mtDNA with the DNA of Karl Marcher, which would be a great nephew of Franziska. I think that's how you pronounce her name, Franziska. That was a match. She was not a Romanov. Bye, Anna Anderson. Thank you for your time. Goodbye. One of the greatest mysteries of the 20th century was finally solved. Or was it? Next on Anastasia Romanov, is she alive or dead? We have Eugenia Smith. Eugenia Drabek Smith-Sisko. According to her naturalization, she was born in 1899. She was the author of what is known as HIH, Anastasia Nikolaevna of Russia. It was required in order for her to publish it that she took a lie detector test. And when she took the lie detector test, she failed. When she initially presented this book, she presented it as a manuscript from the Grand Duchess Anastasia. She didn't claim to have written the manuscript. Then she changed her story, claiming that she is the Duchess Anastasia. And when she took that test, she passed. Once she was cleared from the lie detector test, she changed her birthday to Anastasia's birthday, which would be June 18th, 1901. She was a sensation. She was a fixture in the Manhattan party scene. She was on Life magazine, published on October 18th, 1963. Check it out. While she passed the lie detector test, an anthropologist compared her current self to a picture of Anastasia, and they concluded that there was no match. Then a handwriting analyst also compared her handwriting to the handwriting of a cousin and a schoolmate of Anastasia, and they agreed that there was no match. So the Orthodox Church rejected her claims of being Anastasia. So this kind of put her in a little scramble. Not only that, she refused to give her DNA sample to prove that she is Anastasia. What is this sounding like to you? Because I know what it's sounding like to me. But just like the real Anastasia, she was an avid painter. She painted different scenes of her childhood or what her childhood was like. She painted the court. She was amazing. She was really talented. Proverbs Parker feels that there is a facial match amongst Anastasia, the real Anastasia, and Eugenia Smith. He'd like to obtain a DNA sample, but he doesn't have permission and would need to obtain permission from the Holy Trinity Orthodox Monastery in Jordanville, New York, which is where she was buried. But it's highly unlikely that the monastery will grant this permission since they dismissed her claims in the first place. Not only that, the Romanovs are seen as martyrs of the Orthodox Church. So having a live relative would kind of cause a conflict. In March 2009, Dr. Michael D. Coble, along with other scientists, did a DNA analysis and found Alexei's remains. This was going back to 2007. They published it in 2009. I want to be clear about that. And also the fragments of remains that could have been Anastasia. It was confirmed that those were Alexei's remains, but the fragments of bones that they were trying to use as Anastasia's couldn't be confirmed. They were saying that it could have been a fragment from one of her sisters. With this being said, there's still room for a lot of speculation and mystery. It was a good chance that Anastasia was still alive and that Eugenia Smith was the real Anastasia. I mean, come on, she passed the lie detector test. Not only did she pass the lie detector test, but she also made annual trips to England in the 1920s and 1930s. So Proverbs Parker said that, quote unquote, he thinks those trips were made to retrieve money held in English banks through the Romanovs' British family connections, eventually funding an annual endowment by Smith of approximately $40,000 to the Foundation of Russian History Museum. And these museums were the holders and suppliers of Russian Romanov artifacts. So I say all of this to say that this lady was pretty much a millionaire without the Romanov inheritance. So what would be her reasoning for impersonating the princess? She wouldn't really get any gain from it. Of course, she would have more money than she had at that moment, but money wasn't an issue for her. And then she was already recognized as a person in good standing. She was an artist similar to Anastasia. And not only that, not only did she already have money, but she passed the lie detector test. It was a 30-hour lie detector test, and she passed with flying colors. But the only thing that makes this tricky is that she did not want to give up her DNA. And because the Orthodox monastery didn't want to kind of chalking up that idea of the Romanovs being martyrs, they didn't want to release her remains so that it can be tested whether she was the real Anastasia or if she was a fake. And this right here is the kicker, because during the time lapse of what Anastasia would have looked like if she had the chance to grow older, her and Eugenia Smith are like a perfect match. I don't know about y'all, but like I'm kind of convinced that it might be a possibility that Eugenia Smith may be the real Anastasia. What do y'all think? What do you think? Leave down a comment below. Is she or is she not? I mean, there is a huge gray area when it comes to finding out if she is or if she isn't. But what I will say is that there's a good chance she might. For the basis of this video, I'm just going to say that she isn't because it hasn't been confirmed. And lastly, even if Eugenia Smith is Anastasia, she didn't get the happy ending that Disney portrayed. So there you go, the murder, the mystery, and the history of Anastasia Romanov. Meet me here, same time, same place, next week. Bye.